Easter dinner at my grandmother's house runs on its own kind of gravity. Too many chairs crammed around a table built for 8. Glasses refilled before they're half empty. The smell of baked ham soaking into the curtains like it's paying rent. Until summer. My cousins arguing over sports scores, while the older generation watches from their chairs like retired referees, still judging, just no longer blowing the whistle. And every single year, without anyone announcing it, the comparison game begins. No one says it out loud. Nobody stands up and declares it. But it's there, thick and invisible, like smoke. People measuring careers the way farmers inspect crops after a hard season. Who's growing? Who's stalled? Who planted in the wrong soil and is too proud to admit it? I learned a long time ago that my work didn't translate well across that table. It never fit neatly into a sentence that could impress someone. Between bites of potato salad, my brother Daniel's work did. Daniel worked at a tech firm. One of those names you'd recognize in an instant. The kind that made people nod like they were in on something. He used words like architecture, deployment, and scale as if they were rare metals pulled from the earth. Our relatives leaned forward when he spoke. Even the ones who had no idea what he meant understood enough to feel impressed. There was a performance to it. And he was very, very good at it. My work, harder to package, harder to sell at a dinner table between the breadbasket and the salad bowl. So years ago, I stopped trying. If someone asked, I'd say I worked in infrastructure, software and partnerships. That answer did exactly what I needed it to do. It ended the conversation. People nodded politely, the way you nod when a mechanic explains why your brakes are failing. Grateful for the information. Glad to move on. Walking into that house this Easter felt no different. Same table. Same ham. Same invisible scoreboard. Hanging in the air above everyone's heads. Daniel arrived, 30 minutes late, because of course he did. He slid into his chair like a headliner taking the stage, and immediately launched into a story about a project deadline and a team that just couldn't keep up. He shook his head with the practiced disappointment of a man who'd told this story before and knew exactly where it landed. People listened. They always did. I ate quietly. Let the rhythm of the table move around me like water around a stone. Then, the conversation drifted somewhere. It always eventually drifts toward layoffs in tech. Someone mentioned a neighbor's son who'd lost his position. An uncle shook his head, heavy and slow. The industry sounds brutal these days. Daniel wiped the corner of his mouth with a linen napkin, leaned back in his chair, the posture of a man completely at ease, and said, "Well, not everyone can handle a real career in tech." He didn't look at me when he said it. He didn't have to. The line floated across the table like a paper airplane, slow and deliberate. Not a direct hit. Just close enough. A couple of cousins chuckled. Someone reached for the rolls. I focused on my plate, with the calm of someone who had learned after years of practice that defending yourself at a family dinner is a war you can't win. You explain, they debate. You debate, it escalates. You escalate, and suddenly you're the problem. So, I said nothing. What none of them knew was that this had been the most relentlessly demanding year of my entire career. Months of late-night calls. Lawyers dialing in from different time zones at hours that shouldn't exist. Financial models that changed weekly, sometimes daily. Negotiations that moved forward, collapsed, restarted, nearly died, then came back. To life. A deal that consumed a year of my life in rooms most people will never see, behind documents most people will never read. For a result that would ripple far beyond anything visible from the outside. That kind of work doesn't look like anything at a dinner table. It doesn't come with language that dazzles. It lives in encrypted files and handshakes and months of quiet, grinding effort. But dinner moved on. Someone asked for the potatoes. Someone else complained about airline prices. Then my grandmother spoke. She had been watching the table the entire time. Not participating. Reading it. She had a way of doing that, sitting perfectly still while everything moved around her. Like she was cataloging every undercurrent, every subtext, every small cruelty hiding behind a polite smile. She turned in her chair and looked at me. Casual. Almost offhand. Like she was asking about the weather. "Sweetheart," she said. "Is that why your company just bought his—" The room stopped, not dramatically. Not like a movie. Just a small, collective pause. The kind that happens when the air changes and everyone registers it at the same moment. Without knowing quite why, Daniel blinked. "Bought whose?" he asked. Grandma shrugged lightly, the effortless shrug of a woman who had nothing to prove to anyone. I heard something from Mrs. Callahan's grandson. He works in finance somewhere. Said there was an acquisition. Thought it was your company, she said, nodding toward me. And that it involved Daniel's. Forks froze mid-air, halfway to mouths. I felt the strange, surreal sensation of two separate worlds colliding. My work life, which had existed in a sealed chamber for nearly a year, suddenly stepping through a door and standing in the middle of my grandmother's dining room, between the ham and the dinner rolls. It closed last week, I said. That was it. No speech. No explanation. Just the fact. Offered the way you'd mentioned the time. My uncle leaned forward slowly, like the floor had shifted under him. Wait, he said. You mean your company? ... I nodded once. Daniel was already on his phone. Still calm. Still operating under the assumption that the universe was arranged the way it had been 45 minutes ago. He scrolled. Checked something else. Then the color in his face changed. Not embarrassment. Something more like recalculation. The look of a man quietly updating a map he just realized was outdated. Acquisitions move fast internally. But the news takes days to filter down through the layers. Apparently, today was that day for Daniel. Around the table, people were connecting dots. My cousin Emily whispered, "Oh, the specific O." That means someone suddenly understands something they'd been missing. Daniel looked up from his phone. His voice was measured. Careful? So you go. What? Exactly? Part of the leadership group that negotiated it, I said. Same tone. No performance. No flourish. The authority in the room didn't come from me saying anything clever. It didn't come from tone, or posture, or carefully chosen vocabulary. It came from the simple, immovable fact that the paperwork was already signed. The companies were already merged. The org charts were already changing in buildings far away from this dining room. No one could argue with it. There was nothing to argue with. Daniel sat back slowly. For the rest of dinner, he talked less. Not bitterly, he wasn't defeated. Not exactly. Just quieter. Like someone who'd been navigating confidently and had just discovered the road he thought he knew went somewhere completely different. Conversation found its way back to safer ground. Desert appeared. My aunt launched into a story about a neighbor's dog that required very little from anyone. The room breathed again. But something had shifted. Quietly. Permanently. Later, while I was stacking plates in the kitchen, I heard my grandmother's footsteps behind me. She came in, dried her hands on a dish towel, and gave me the smallest look, the kind that carries a whole conversation in a single glance. I figured your work was bigger than you made it sound, she said. I smiled. I just never saw the point in explaining it. She nodded slowly, not like the polite nod people give when a mechanic talks about brakes. A real nod. The nod of someone who understood completely and always had. In the dining room, I could hear Daniel's voice again, softer now, talking to my uncle about industry changes. I paused for a moment and listened. The strange part, the part I keep coming back to, is that I didn't feel victorious. The acquisition had taken nearly a year of my life. Late nights, collapsed deals, relaunched negotiations, lawyers, models, pressure. Compared to all of that, the moment at the dinner table felt almost incidental. A small ripple from a very large stone. What mattered more was something I hadn't expected to feel. For the first time in years, sitting at that table, in that house, surrounded by those people, I didn't feel the need to prove a single thing. Room had simply caught up to what was already true, and that, somehow, was enough.